Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Adam from Hot Pole Studios here, and today we're going to be talking about the new Audiofuse 8 pre-interface from Arturia. So, Arturia are mostly known for their synths. Both synth hardware and software. I first came across Arturia 15 years ago or so with their V Moog Mini and Moog Modular, and they were really impressive for the time. They kind of ate up a lot of your CPU, but that was 15 years ago. Everything's come a long way since then. And so Arturia have recently expanded out from just synths and synth hardware to interfaces as well, so enter the Audiofuse. They may be relatively new to the audio interface arena, but there are some very interesting features here that seem to be worth looking at. Now, usually when I review something like an interface, I would have it in front of me on the desk. Usually I'd have it so I can pick it up and show you what's going on. I'm going to have to talk through it because it's behind me in the rack. It spent most of its review period out on the desk or in the live room. I've been using it quite a lot to record things remotely without using the main studio computer, almost to prove a point, almost for practical purposes. But I've got to say, it's a very clever little unit. So what it actually is, it's an 8-channel interface with 8 preamps that are also line-ins and 8 outputs, but it's also got a second left and right, so it's got 10 outputs essentially. But it's also got ADAT, so that you can have another 8 ins and another 8 outs. There are 2 ADAT ports in and 2 ADAT ports out, but you can't use them separately of each other. They're only there so that when you go up to 88 or 96 kilohertz, you can use all of the available ADAT channels because of a thing called SMUX. There are only so many channels you can fit down an ADAT cable. So that means that even at 96K, it's a 16 in, 16 out interface. But 44.1 and 48 kHz, it's also 16 in, 16 out. One thing that you can do, however, is it's got a button on the very bottom right which says USB or ADAT. And the way that I'm using it is the other way that isn't an interface, and that is the ADAT mode. So for my studio setup, it's a little bit weird, but I use an RME card system in the computer that's full of ADAT ports. And so I'm now using the Audiofuse as a preamp bank and also as 8 channels of nice clean output as well. Talking of nice clean output, let's talk about the ins and outs. So it's got 8 mic preamps, which also have line inputs, and the first 2 channels can also be instrument level, so essentially you don't need a DI. And I tried the instrument level on those, and they are very clean and very low noise indeed, which is really quite impressive. Something that's very clever, if you look at the front of it, there are 2 Xlr Combo Ports on the front. Now, I've seen that before on interfaces where there are 2 on the front and 6 on the back, and that makes 8 in total. I find that to be quite inconvenient, and in that case, that's something that I think should be addressed. But here, that's not the case. Here, there are 8 Combi Ports on the back that are both XLR and TRS jack, and the ones on the front are for channel 1 and 2. If you don't plug into the ones on the front and plug into the ones on the back, they become active, but in my circumstance, which is the kind of time you'd use it, I've got this fixed in a rack permanently. But if I plug a microphone into channel 1 or channel 2, then that will cancel that same input on the back and use a relay switch with a nice satisfying click to enable the front input. Talking of relays, every channel has relays in it, so that if you were to plug in a TRS jack, you hear a nice click and a little light comes up that says line. If you plug in an XLR, there's a nice little click and it says mic. That's quite important because that tells me that they're enabling certain parts of the circuit or disabling parts so that the circuit can be the best that it can be for each circumstance that you're plugging in by physically disconnecting the rest of that channel inside. Because, of course, in terms of preamp design, the less components you have, arguably, the better the performance should be. I think that's how the theory goes anyway. That if you've got unnecessary parts for extra functionality, they can be detrimental to noise performance and things like that. But in this case, you can actually hear it disconnecting stuff, which I thought was very clever indeed. Probably due to the fact that it's got the relays and all that kind of stuff, I found that the microphone inputs on it are really sensitive. In fact, I'm using the mic input on channel 1 right now, and I'm using my Sennheiser shotgun mic just above the camera into channel 1, which is recording onto the iPad behind me, which answers that question, can you use it with an iPad? Yes, you can. It's class compliant, it works perfectly well. And the gain, usually on preamps that are inbuilt into interfaces, when I'm using this microphone, it's really quite quiet. So I usually have the gain all the way almost to the limit. In this case, it's less than halfway up. The dial's at around 11 o'clock, and I had to back it off a little bit so it didn't clip. These things are incredibly sensitive, and that's a great thing, I think. That means that I really get to use the full range of the gain knob, which means I'm guessing they've done it in a certain way that you don't get loads of gain right at the end of the dial. However, that does mean that with the gain all the way to the left, I still found that putting microphones on a guitar cab would instantly make the channel clip. Not a problem though, because every channel has an inbuilt pad, and I found myself using those pads quite a lot. If I was recording any loud source like snare drum, guitar cab, even at one point overheads on a drum kit, they all had the pads engaged, and I'm happy to report that the pads didn't seem to affect the tone negatively, which is really good. Here's a clip of the channels on the Audiofuse recording a crunchy rock guitar. Firstly using a Rode dynamic mic, the pod mic, which is kind of in place of the SM57 type thing, and an Extinct Audio handmade ribbon, and then the two of them together, which sounds really quite nice to me. Check this out. Recently, I filmed the Ultimate Reaper course, which, if that's not already out, that'll be out soon. If it is, I'll put a link in the description below. And to demonstrate that's what that guitar recording was from, and I also recorded a full 8-channel drum kit, which was using a laptop, which absolutely handled things perfectly. And so here's a little clip of that. I did an entire 71-part course using the Audiofuse on this desk here right in front of me, and it didn't let me down once. Didn't have any driver issues, didn't have any latency issues. The latency was overall fairly decent. I have seen better latency latency out of USB interfaces, but only from people like RME, where the budget for something like that would be way, way higher. And like I say, it wasn't a bad latency to begin with. There are some nice little features here as well, like every channel having its own 48-volt phantom power button. Something that makes me cringe is when I've got banks of shared phantom power. I personally don't think that ribbons tend to get damaged from that. I've had experience of things being fine, but if it's something you want to be careful about, and there's nothing wrong with that, then having separate 48-volt phantom power on every channel is definitely something that will put your mind at ease. There's also a phase flip button on every channel, so if you've got a mic or two, or even a few where the polarity needs to be switched, you can do it in hardware rather than having to come back to it in software and cause issues for other mix engineers. The headphone out really is quite impressive. These are my trusty Sennheiser 650s. You can see they look pretty battered by this point. But I use my 650s. It's got a big and small headphone jack, which means that if you forget your adapter, not a problem. And it was really loud with 650s, which are notoriously difficult to drive. Things like iPhones, that kind of thing, really struggle to push enough decent quality volume for something like 650s and other hard to push high impedance headphones. And I definitely found that wasn't an issue. The connection is USB-C, which is definitely a good thing. That's the modern connection, which can go upside down, so there's no way to put the cable in wrong. And Arturia supply a very nice, quite long, properly braided cable with the interface. That might sound like a silly little thing, but honestly, so many interface manufacturers could really do with supplying you a longer cable with their interface so that you don't have to sit the machine you're working on, the interface right next to each other. That can really make life a little bit easier, and it's one of those nice little thoughtful things that really can make life that little bit easier. The rack ears actually can come off and go a certain way so that there are feet you put on the back of it, and the rack ears become feet. So if you don't want to use it as a rack unit, you can have it stood as a standalone thing, which you definitely do need to have some sort of ventilation underneath or behind it, because the Audiofuse 8 Pre does generate quite a bit of heat. It's a 15-volt 2 amp input, which is 30 watts. And that 30 watts, after a while, can really start to feel warm on the back. I mean, 30 watts isn't something to cook an egg on, but it's definitely worth keeping in mind that that's needs a bit of ventilation to make sure it's going to be functioning properly, especially if you're in an area of the world where ambient temperatures can be quite high. There's the Audiofuse app, which you get through Arturia's control center, software center, which is really fairly intuitive to use. You can remotely control things like 48 volts and pads and every button that's on the interface, so you don't have to be physically right next to it, which can be quite handy if you're in the middle of working and you just want to tab around to the app if you've got quite a long cable going to wherever it is that you're going. That can make life a little bit easier. And in terms of software, it comes with some really nice emulations of a Neve preamp, a Trident preamp, a Telefunken preamp, and some really nice delays. And I really found them quite useful in a mix. I took my laptop to NAMM last week, which is the thing in LA, which is a long way away for me. And I didn't have anything to mix with other than these preamps and the delays, and it really helped me out. And so there's a track that we're releasing very soon, which has all the channels have got either the Neve 1073 or the Telefunken V76 style EQ and preamp on them, and that really helped to bring the thing to life. The guitar solo's got the nice Roland Space Echo type delay on it. And having that software that comes with it is a definite bonus. So that bonus helps to justify the price. Last thing to talk about, the price. They are retailing currently at €799. So definitely not the cheapest that you'll find. If you're looking for cheap, then the Audiofuse 8 Pre probably isn't for you. If you're looking for really good quality with a solid build, really clean preamps that can give you loads of sensitivity, really nice low noise outputs, which I tested with reamping a guitar, and reamping can really reveal weakness in the quality of outputs on an interface, because if you've got a cheap interface, the noise gets in, especially when you start adding lots of gain, and that really wasn't the case here. And so if you're looking for something solid, then you can do much worse than checking out the Audiofuse 8 Pre. It's out now, check it out. Thank you everybody for watching this review. Full disclosure, I liked this so much that I've decided to keep it. Arturia agreed to give it to me for a little bit of a discount because I already had it. And so, again, full disclosure, I'm not being paid for this review. If I didn't like it, I would have just sent it back, because that's what we do with gear reviews. 9 times out of 10, we will send equipment back, even if we like it, because we can't buy everything. But this has become my #1 set of general purpose recording, clean modern preamps and clean modern outputs, and I can't say much fairer than that. So yes, check it out, see if you need one for yourself. Thanks for watching, and hopefully we'll see you in the next video. There's so much coming out right now with all the NAMM content. There's stuff about ribbon mics, drum mics, there's all sorts of weird and wonderful stuff that we're talking about over the next few weeks and going forward. There's more Reaper content coming. There's more and more of everything. So thank you everybody for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.
Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this, feel free to check out our other videos, as you can find here, or check out our Facebook and Twitter, or our Patreon page, which helps us to make more videos like this. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.